You ready?
Yeah.
You ready? All right, hold on. Here we go.
What's going on, everyone? Alex Miller here at the Eagle. We're here in the studio. We're adding more.
It's a work in progress.
It really is. We're entering maybe stage 2. We're getting there. We got the TV down. We got some audio boards. We got a little bit of. It's kind of like the aesthetic is coming along. Okay. Travis was talking about that earlier. We're working on it. So
it's almost ready for you to shoot your TikTok videos in here.
Yes.
Your dance videos.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm not the Consol baseball team, but I could probably do TikTok. All right. I'm joined by Travis Brown and Robert Cessna, the Eagle. What's going on, everyone? Cease, it's your first time in our studio.
I've always wanted to know what a man cave looked like, so I guess this is about as close as I'm going to get.
This is Dave McDermott, the legendary photographer's old studio. How different does this look now than the last time you saw it when McD was here?
I think the last time I was in here without, the cops were here too, so I don't know.
All right. Well, I think on Saturday we saw some football over at the place where the Aggies play.
Or some like frisbee golf with the wind.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, but A&M had their spring game on Saturday. Obviously, the biggest question people are wanting to ask and see were about the quarterbacks and how'd they play. You two were there. You know, what'd you kind of see from the three guys going for the Aggies starting job?
Well, I think you got to hit on the weather because the wind just kind of totally disrupts, to me, any semblance of a spring game because people ask me, what were you going to look at before? I was going to look at the quarterbacks. I wanted to see how they threw the 18-yard down and out. I wanted to see how they threw the seam ball. I wanted to see how they threw deep. I wanted to see how they threw the back shoulder. So all those throws were affected by the weather. And even the receivers, I thought it afterwards when Jimbo complained about the receivers with the drops, which was true. Think about it. You're a receiver. You're so used to turning the ball being right there. Well, you didn't know where the ball was going to be because of the weather. So I even give the receivers a pass. I think the wind really played havoc with the game.
Yeah, I think that that was a big factor, definitely the wind. I think the other big factor was how many guys on defense were injured. So it was kind of hard to get a good look, to get a good feel of what that defense was going to look like with how many guys were injured. And you already know that they're going to take it a little bit light on defense. They're not going to hit quite as hard as they might in the season. So it's hard to tell there, but there was some guys injured. And I wanted to see how Evan Stewart, the freshman wide receiver, was going to do, and he did pretty well.
Yeah, he had 7 catches over 100 yards. I think he was targeted, 14 times?
13 times.
13 times. I mean, they were clearly trying to get him the ball.
He had the spring game and made the impact we all thought Demond Demas would make when he got here. And I think, once again, it shows that A&M's reaching a point. You get enough 4-stars and 5-star guys, you're going to get those results. Everybody just was googly-eyed over Demas because he was like that first 5-star wide receiver probably since Kirk or something. I mean, it's been a while. And then to be a total bust. He was basically a total bust. And we know we're going to see that again in some, five-star guys. But for the most part, that's what you expect a 5-star guy to do. What he did, what the lineman did. He looks so good on defense. Drew blank right now that.
Fadil Diggs.
No, the other guy that came in, another 5-star lineman that looks so good.
And Lucas.
Yeah,
Lucas.
I'm just saying, that's what you expect 5-star guys to do. And I think Demas was like one of a kind. He was that first guy. Well, now we're going to see those 5-star guys all the time. So you're going to see a guy look like a 5-star athlete when he does that down across, which Stewart looked like a man out there.
Mm-hmm. Cease, I'm interested to see. I know the weather conditions were rough. It was hard to throw. It looked like a little bit more like frisbee golf at times. What did you see out of those quarterbacks? Who did you feel like had the edge?
Well, but believe it or not, if you put a gun to my head and said for that day, I would have gone with Johnson. I liked his presence in the pocket. Now you also got to remember, the guy started 14 SEC games, most of them in the West. And they didn't think he was going to be the answer at LSU, but then guys got hurt, and he ended up, I don't think he's the leader. I think, Haynes King's got to be the leader just when you consider, I'm a betting man, and that's been kind of been Jimbo's guy, and I expect him to be a starting quarterback. But when you got a guy like Johnson there, it's only going to be better for everybody. Then you look at Wigman or however he pronounces his name, Connor. Once he gets a little more experience, you can see why Jimbo thinks he's good. Bottom line is, it's just like us right now. You got A, B, and C. 1A, 1B, 1C. Jimbo's got that, and I never felt they had that. In bless his soul, he might have beaten Alabama last year, Calzada, but to me, Calzada never looked like he had that it factor. Now maybe he'll go and do great at Auburn, but I think all three of those guys have the potential to have the it factor, and we actually saw Haynes King have that it factor when he's been flashing out there, and I think Johnson has it too.
Yeah, Travis, I think last week we kind of talked, me, you, and Zach, about, all right, what's kind of your pre-spring game pecking order? I think the consensus was that Haynes King was the favorite with Johnson in the middle, Connor Wegman at 3. Do you stand by that, or what's your rankings now after seeing the three of them go out in the spring game?
I'd have to agree with Cease there. I think Max Johnson had the better poise. Jimbo Fisher talks a lot about when he's looking at which guy he's going to name the starting quarterback, which guy commands the respect, the attention, who can run the offense, who can have the most poise in the huddle. It seemed like that was Max Johnson, and again, he has that experience more experience of that over Haynes King and, of course, Connor Wegman. I just think Max Johnson looked a little bit better, and if you want to look at his numbers and what he was able to do, he was doing that behind what seems to be the second string offensive line and the second string or even third string wide receivers. So there is a little bit of something to that because he was on the white team and the maroon team was mostly the kind of the guys that you think might be that starting lineup. So I think that Max Johnson might have a little bit of an edge, but like C said, there is more time in the playbook. Haynes King was the guy last year. It's hard to say that Jimbo is going to go in a different direction after he made that choice last year, but it is, this is about as competitive of a quarterback battle, at least that we've had since I've been here, because, it was pretty, when I got here, it was Trevor Knight, hands down, and then you had the Kellen Mond, Calzada, and while, maybe at the time that seemed pretty competitive, I think we kind of come to realize, Nick Starkel, that we've come to realize that wasn't maybe as close as we thought, so this seems as competitive as it's been.
Without a doubt, and I have those moments when I'm driving around and call it a senior moment, or I laugh to myself one time. I go, it's almost like having Kyler Murray and Allen around, like you got two future NFL quarterbacks. And of course, that didn't turn out too well, but I like the talent. And I like, if you're sitting there, Jimbo, he can't pick a loser. He's got really three winners, and I'm putting Wagman back because he just ain't going to do it as a true freshman. Not when you got two guys like that. So to me, it's a two-man race. And he's not going to lose. Whoever wins, and I hate to say it, last year I felt that, while Calzada threw a deep ball, it was going to be Haynes. We all thought it was going to be Haynes. I would still say going in it's going to be Haynes, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was Johnson. So what I've seen, once again and that's what Jimbo wants. At every position he wants where if he picks a guy, maybe 40% of the Aggie fans are saying, wow, the other guy's better. It's a nice problem to have.
Yeah, and a couple things that stood out to me, just it seemed like with Wigman, they were kind of running some more advanced concepts with him, going downfield, running out, opening the playbook. You can tell that Jimbo can see the talent and the potential that he has, and he's trying to catch him up to speed if, in fact, he would have to enter the game. Definitely not treating him like a typical true freshman, it seems. And, I think on that first drive was when Haynes King had the option keeper and took it in for the touchdown. That seemed to be the element that Jimbo and A&M players were talking about. Hey, this is going to be a part of this offense this year, and just was not there once Haynes got injured and Calzada was the quarterback. And how about Max Johnson kind of strutting down the field? A little bit of an ugly stride, I got to say it. But, that's something that I don't really think he necessarily flashed at LSU. And so, knowing that Haynes King has the ability to do that, certainly something you could maybe at least look at as something Johnson could have as well.
Something I noticed with Johnson, and you can correct me on this because you probably have a little bit more of an eye for this than I do, is it seemed like with Johnson, and maybe to Haynes King with some extent, they were running a lot more RPO concepts than maybe they have in the years past. I know Jimbo Fisher, especially last year, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of RPO built into their offense, and it's something that isn't quite pro style, but it seemed like there was a lot of that run pass option bootleg kind of concepts going on. Again, it's the spring game. They're going to throw a lot of vanilla stuff out there because they're not going to give away their whole playbook, and they're not going to even have installed their whole playbook yet. But I'll be interested to see that, especially with maybe not having quite the 1-2 punch potentially at running back with Isaiah Spiller gone, if that RPO kind of system might be something that ekes its way in a little bit more.
Yeah, and you mentioned the receivers and just the drops, but two things that stood out to me on that. One, even though it was so windy, they were still throwing it downfield, which shows they want to do that and probably feel they have the personnel to do that, both at quarterback and receiver. The other thing, too, was when they caught the ball, there were some catch and runs. I mean, you think about Jalen Preston coming over the middle and then running for the touchdown. That's really something we haven't really seen from A&M receivers, whereas, you look at Alabama. How many times do they hit one of those guys on an 8-yard slant and 10 seconds later they're in the end zone, lights are going off with fireworks? I mean, that's just something A&M hasn't necessarily had at receiver per se. Guys that can, catch the ball and run and take off, make big plays.
Well, I think it gets back to this. If you're going to recruit 5-star wide receivers, you got to use them. And I think to me, it's a little bit like, let's wait and see. But, Nick Saban was a defensive-minded guy. And about 5 years ago, he got around Lane Kiffin and said, I need to score. I need to score. So he changed. I think we're going to see that change in Jimbo. Maybe not as drastic, but I think he wants to be able to outscore people if he has to by 35, 40 points, where I think he was born on that, I'm going to win a game 28-21, 28-20. I'm going to control the clock. We saw that. He didn't like his defense, wanted to keep him off the field. I just think you're seeing that he wants to bring all 5-star guys in there, just like, you look at some of the quarterbacks early in Saban's career at Alabama weren't that great, as far as prospects, but suddenly he's changed everything. I think Jimbo, when he says he's going to throw the ball downfield, he said that in the postgame, and I think he is. I think they're going to want to score every time they have the ball, and I know maybe it's drastic. It'll be interesting to see what happens when he plays that first big game, but I think Jimbo's going to change a little bit.
Yeah, and one more thing on the defense. Travis, you mentioned how many guys were out in the secondary. A young guy that we've heard a lot about is Bryce Anderson at safety. And, he was running out there with that first-team defense. Just from watching him play, even though you're getting guys like Antonio Johnson and Jalen Jones and Tyreek Chappelle back, it looks like it might be hard to keep that guy off the field just with the way that he's playing right now.
Well, and if you move Antonio Johnson to safety, there's going to be a little bit of competition for that nickelback position, and
right.
That could be a spot where he gets himself onto the field. I'll be interested to see. I think Antonio Johnson is a piece there to see where he ends up lining up when it's all said and done, and who can slot into that nickelback position.
Yeah, it really wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of do that matchups. I mean, you look back at the Arkansas game last year where Traylon Burks just dusted A&M that first half. They put Antonio Johnson on him that second half. He had like one catch. Mm-hmm. So,
Cease, did you? The other thing to notice, and I will also admit to the fact that I had to bail at halftime to go cover A&M baseball, so you got to see the whole game. How different, or did you notice any difference in the defense with DJ Durkin there over at Mike Elko? Because to me, on just kind of first blush, first glance, you might not have necessarily even known that Mike Elko was gone with the way that the defense kind of looked.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I can't answer that question, and if I would, I'd be lying. I have no idea. I was focusing on the wide receivers. Yeah. I was focusing on the quarterbacks, and I have no idea. Once again, I think what Elko laid the foundation here. I think, whoever you are, you're walking into a great situation. You guys touched on it. They're going to have better chances to match up. The defensive line should be able to put more pressure on. I mean, just everything that is able to be laid under Elko, Durkin should be able to go ahead and fine-tune it and get a lot of the props. Now, I like the way all the guys said the defenders kind of smiled and chuckled, and they liked the things about Durkin. You don't think Jimbo's not going to hire a guy that's going to continue what was here, and he made a point of that. So I have no idea what a Durkin defense looks like, but we're going to eventually see it, and all the pieces are there. Like you mentioned, Anderson, it was hard not to notice him. It's hard not to notice these other guys that they have. And they have enough of them now that maybe they won't have that one weak link. It'd be a little bit like in Alabama. Okay, who are you going to pick on? But it seemed like in the last couple of years, there was always one or two guys, if you're the opposition, you could pick on that they maybe weren't that strong. Or you could even count on O'Neal making a stupid penalty or something. I mean, I think they'll do away with that. Once again, competition will eliminate some of those little mistakes.
For sure. Well, let's kind of pivot here. We got Cease in the house, of course. So let's talk a little women's basketball. You know, A&M hired Joni Taylor last month to replace the legendary Gary Blair. It's been, about a month since that's gone down? You know, what are you kind of assessing with the state of A&M women's basketball right now, Cease?
You know, it's a little bit like, and I've had a couple emails, it's a little bit like, you know, the hangover after the party or whatever. Okay, the Gary Blair tour is over. You know, he's gone. There was a lot of positive things about Gary Blair's final year, but none of them were on the court. When you think about it, it was really a bad year. And the reality of it is you're sitting here now, when you look at both A&M basketball programs, they've reversed. I saw two top 25 polls this week going into the season. A&M men were in one. They were in the next 5 out in the other one. You see the two women's poll, A&M women aren't anywhere to be had. After being up there for like 14, 15 years in a row, A&M's been ranked. They're not in there. Why would you be in there when you tied for 12th? So here Joni Taylor comes in. The party's over. We don't know if she's hired any assistants yet. We don't know if, to our best of our knowledge, no transfers in yet, nobody leaving yet. It's been very quiet on the Western Front, but time's ticking because I saw like the best player in Mississippi State went to Tennessee. So there are moves being made, and you're already taking over a team. You're taking over from a legend, a guy who won a national championship, but you're taking over the 12th place team in the SEC. So the fact that Joni Taylor hasn't talked to us or been out talking, hopefully she's working because she's got work to do. Because she didn't take over, she took over a great program, but the team wasn't good. And no matter how you say how good those girls are, they got a banquet coming up here this week. It was just a tough season on the court. Now, how much of that was because of Gary Blair's last year? I don't know. Would things have been different if it wasn't Gary Blair's? It's that little thing. I got 2 A's in college, and one course was in logic. Logic, we don't know. We don't know what would happen. I'm so illogical, I am logical. But Joni Taylor, come September, whatever it is, she better be ready to go because the men are going to be flying high here with what Buzz did down the stretch. And if people are going to want to see a repeat of what Gary Blair did, but she took over a 14 and 15 team that lost 3 1,000-point scores. So Mrs. Taylor has got work to do.
When you mentioned it being quiet on the Western Front as far as ingoings and outgoings, transfer portal, I know you won't know what that plan is, but I mean, this is a team that probably needs to add some pieces from what they were able to do last year, correct?
Well, when you look at it, because there's no need to criticize somebody like Kayla Wells and Destiny Pitts, but they didn't have the kind of senior years they thought they would. I mean, Wells had some good numbers, but they just couldn't get over the hump and win big games. So you had what you thought was a Sweet 16 team, and they fell woefully short, and the 3 of the key components of that team are gone. So you're right. Whether it's one of those guys one of those girls need to step up, you've got to be a lot better next year at a lot of positions. And now, do you do that internally? Because I've seen that. I've seen some girls go, for a good example is Jordan Nixon was obviously hurt this year, physically. She lost a step. And when you're a point guard, that your whole game's based on quickness, you can't be losing a step. So if she comes back, because supposedly she had a knee cleaned out or whatever, if she comes back herself and you got a all-conference point guard, suddenly you became a lot better. So it can move quickly because basketball's 5. But you're right, whether it's in-house or out-house, Wow, outhouse. Wow.
Yeah.
You've got to get better in about 3 or 4 of those 5 spots, or you're going to have another average season.
Well, Travis, I think we'd be remiss not to have a little baseball talk.
Yeah,
while we're doing
baseball.
this.
Sure. A&M goes to Georgia this weekend, another big matchup, trying to stack series wins for the first time in SEC play this year. Jim Schlossnagle is going to mix things around a little bit in the starting lineup. He's going to go with Detmer and Dallas as the bookends like he has, but he's going to replace Ryan Prager, and that could be an option of Chris Cortez, it could be Will Johnson, or it could be Jacob Palish, who's been pretty much their most consistent arm out of the bullpen. They stretched Cortez in the Saturday game against Kentucky where they ended up losing and they were down by a lot. To see how he managed going through the order, I think he ended up going through 3 times, but how he ended up going through a second time and a third time. And what they noticed was he's been working all season on his slider, and that breaking ball actually started to hit. Which means he's now really a 3-pitch pitcher. And in the SEC, you got to have at least 3 pitches to be a starter and make it through the lineup 1 or 2 times. He is probably their strongest arm in the bullpen. So I'm leaning towards the fact that even though they would be a 3-righty rotation, he might be your best option because he does have a good pitch mix. He does have that mid to upper 90s speed that will give him a little bit of an advantage. And I don't think you want to take Jacob Palish out of the bullpen, who's been about as consistent as anyone has been in that bullpen through the season, even though he is the senior and does have some starting experiences in the past. The other option is bringing in a lefty, Will Johnston, who has been their midweek starter since Christian Curtis went out injured. He threw 2 innings last night, because we're recording this on Wednesday, at A&M Corpus Christi, threw about 30 pitches. So it would probably be, with 30 pitches, that's right on the border of could you bring him back or not. And if you brought him back, you're probably still maybe looking at a bullpen game on Saturday because he probably couldn't give you 7 innings. So I would think if they want to go to Johnson in the future, they might slip Cortez, Palish in for this Saturday, throw somebody else on Tuesday. That they just don't have enough depth at starting pitcher right now. And to try to, with Christian Curtis going out injured, with Jonathan Childress being injured, with he having starting pitching experience in the past, it's a tough situation for Jim Schlossnagle because not only do you have to balance a weekend rotation, but then you got to find a Tuesday guy, and they're having to use some of these Tuesday guys into the bullpen on the weekend because they just don't have enough arms right now. So it's a tricky situation. I think I would probably keep Will Johnson in that Tuesday role because he's done a pretty good job there, and then go ahead and slip Cortez in on Saturday, even though you're not getting that righty-lefty mix. But Micah Dallas, Nathan Detmer have been two strong guys, and their bats have been on. They've been able to hit the ball. I think they have the second best batting average in the SEC coming into the series. So it'll be a good test, and if they can start stacking series on each other, that's moving in the right direction of stacking series wins on top of each other.
Yeah, and let's also, when they come back on Tuesday, they play Dallas Baptist, which is a ranked team. I want to ask you a question since we're on baseball. A lot of news this week about Tennessee deciding to go with wooden bats. And what I'm asking you about, you've got a lot of history with Jim Schlossnagle. The rest of us don't. Has he ever done that, had a game where, like, for fun and have the guys hit all wooden bats? Has he done something crazy like that or not?
No, and I don't even, I know the guys, you have wood bats around that they can go use to hit in the cage. Wood bats, of course, for a long time have been used by guys in college, even though they use metal bats, because naturally the sweet spot is smaller on the wood bat. So if you've hit one off the end of the bat or you've hit one off the handle, whereas a metal bat, and granted, the metal bats now are a little bit deader than they ever have been, but you can hit one off the end, you can hit one off the hands and still bloop it into for a base hit. You go into the cage with a wooden bat and you're actually working on barreling up that baseball and getting it right on the sweet spot every time. So that's been something that college guys have done all the time. But with Jim Schlossnagle, you don't really see that much outside of the batting cage. Even when they do BP, they're using the bats that they use in the game, and they're not doing the whole wood switch. So of course, there's never been an instance where I've known of that they've switched and done a whole wood. I've actually never heard of that anywhere, at least in my time following college baseball, where a team has said, we're so confident and cocky that we're going to go out there and beat a team with wood bats. I mean, that is just lining you right up for failure to be a punchline like they are today. And it is an interesting conversation that people have had about how well they're hitting the ball this year, that there is, maybe they're using cooked bats, maybe the bats are a little bit hot or something. I don't see how that could even be possible with the fail safes they have, and they check all of the bats and they put these stickers on. There's a whole system that goes into the beginning of a season, it's a series, how they use these bats. I don't see how that's possible. I think Tennessee is just a really good team this year. On top of the bats, their closer, who throws like 102 miles per hour. Yeah. That is a championship quality caliber team, and I think that they're going to probably make some noise.
Nobody's buying bats or nobody's buying players. They're just out playing games.
All right.
Hey, I got to mention, for those of you watching on the video, but if you're not, I think Cease came in here thinking this podcast was going to suck, so he brought his straw with him right away. So, hopefully we overshot those expectations.
That's the last straw. We're out here.
And any complaints can still be emailed to robert.cessna@theeagle.com.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Have we covered our bases, fellas?
Whoa! There
we go.
Yeah.
All right. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage of A&M sports, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Aggie Nation Podcast.
It seems like every day, everything just has a way to burst at the seams. But if we don't watch what we're doing, our hearts will get ruined by silly things. Good love ain't easy, girl, we know that's true. And if we wanna keep it, we gotta watch everything that we do, yeah. Don't wanna make sure, my baby, make sure you're sticking with me.